At the beginning of the story, we are introduced to a woman named Kikimora, who is working in a car junkyard. It is known that Kikimora's life is quite chaotic after she lost her husband who was killed by a hitman. Even every day, Kikimora is always drunk. At night, Kikimora, who had just had a drink, returned to the liquor shop to buy more drinks. Until when Kikimora wanted to return home, she accidentally saw two women who were being harassed by young gangsters. At that moment, Kikimora told the young gangsters not to bother the woman. However, the young gangster did not accept being reprimanded. They wanted to bully Kikimora back, so a fight broke out between them. At first, Kikimora could easily hitting the young gangsters. However, because Kikimora was drunk at the time and did not want to lose control, she decided to give in to the fight. Long story short, when she got home, Kikimora continued drinking. The next day, Kikimora was seen watching a family from inside a car. The person she was monitoring turned out to be a young man, who was Kikimora's biological son, who now lived with his adoptive parents. Kikimora did this, of course, as an effort to release her longing for his son. Shortly after that, Kikimora was surprised by the arrival of a man named Igor. Apparently, Igor is Kikimora's best friend, and Igor works as intel in the police. Here, Igor said that he knew Kikimora was trying to release her longing for her son. However, what Kikimora is doing is against the law, which is secretly monitoring a family. Igor then took Kikimora to the grave of their best friend in an attempt to comfort Kikimora. As it turns out, their friend is Nina Nowak, who was a major in the Special Forces. The scene moves to the house and shows Kikimora, who apparently often monitors her son through social media. Kikimora is very happy because her son gets adoptive parents who seem to love him. It is known that Kikimora's son is named Max. The next morning, when Kikimora was making breakfast, she was curious because there were so many notifications on her laptop. When checked, it turned out that Max's posts had been commented on by many of Max's friends who said that Max had disappeared. As a biological mother, Kikimora will certainly not remain silent. She immediately left her house to look for Max. The first thing Kikimora did was go to her best friend Igor, who is an intel in the police. Here, Kikimora asked if Max's adoptive parents had reported to the police about his disappearance. Igor replied that the report had gone to the police. Unfortunately, Igor's superiors assigned other police officers to find Max. Hearing this, Kikimora told Igor to provide any information regarding the results of the police investigation. However, Igor refused because he had no authority in this matter. Igor also told Kikimora not to worry because Max had grown up and was probably staying at one of his friends' houses. However, Kikimora still asked Igor to let her know if he had any information. After that, Kikimora went to Max's adoptive parents' house, then secretly entered Max's room. Fortunately, the house was quiet at the time because his adoptive parents were still at the police station. After searching for a long time, Kikimora was unable to find any clues. Not long after, the adoptive parents came, but fortunately Kikimora was not caught. The next morning, Igor was seen carrying evidence in the form of Max's cell phone, which the police had found at the scene of the crime. Here, Igor told Kikimora that he had to return the cell phone to the police station in 10 minutes. When the cell phone found by the police was opened, there was a voice message deliberately made by the kidnapper. In the voice message, the kidnapper claimed that he was Dusan Dragon, who was the son of a mafia boss who had been killed by Nina Nowak. Nina Nowak was Igor and Kikimora's best friend who passed away. However, what confused Kikimora was why Dusan Dragon knew that Max was Kikimora's son, and Nina Nowak was their best friend. In fact, the secret should only be known by Igor and Kikimora. Later that evening, Igor went back to Kikimora to tell her what he had just found out. As it turned out, Igor had previously attended a meeting with the intelligence officers. In the meeting, the head of intelligence explained about an international criminal syndicate led by a woman who was diplomat with code-named Beauty Queen. It was known that Beauty Queen was the one who the mind master of all the crimes of the mafia in this country, even though she did not directly participate. Meanwhile, under Beauty Queen is someone named Woltemirs, or known as Volto. Volto is a bald savage who is very cruel, and he is the one who runs the business directly. Then, under Volto was his right-hand man, named Titus, who was responsible for carrying out all orders from Volto. After that, Igor showed the CCTV footage that showed Max being kidnapped by Volto's men. From the footage, he could deduce that Dusan Dragon had hired Volto's men in an attempt to kidnap Max. Here, the only clue Kikimora could get was that Volto's men's car bore the sign of a restaurant called Yam Yam. The scene moves to Volto, who is on the phone with Dusan Dragon. Here, Volto says that he has caught Max, and Dusan Dragon only needs to send the money. Hearing this, Dusan Dragon said that he would send 3% first, while the rest would be sent later if Volto had delivered Max to him. On the other hand, it turned out that Kikimora was already behind the Yam Yam restaurant, and she met some of Volto's men. Here, Kikimora immediately asked where you were holding Max hostage, but it was clear that Volto's men didn't want to say it, so a fight broke out between them. After Kikimora managed to defeat them all, then Kikimora again asked where Max, her son, was. The man finally told her that Max was in Titus's place, who was Volto's trusted right-hand man. Quickly, Kikimora rushed to Titus' places. Then she showed Titus who was Volto's right-hand man. At that time, Titus and his men had just kidnapped dozens of people who were ready to be sold abroad. When the victims were being led out, it turned out that Kikimora was already there. Kikimora was monitoring whether Max was in the line of victims. Unfortunately, after monitoring for a long time, Max was not there. Then Kikimora secretly went inside place to look for Max. The scene moves to Volto, who is again contacted by Dusan Dragon. In the conversation, Dusan Dragon said that he had just sent 3% of the money he had promised. Hearing this, Volto was so happy because he had done business with Dusan Dragon. He also said that Max is currently in Titus' place, who is his right-hand man. At the same time, it turns out that Kikimora is now fighting with Titus. Even some of his men want to kill Kikimora. After winning the battle, Kikimora immediately went to Max, who was being held hostage. However, he was suddenly beaten by Titus from behind, until Kikimora was unconscious. After that, Titus immediately contacted Volto. Titus asked him to come, because Max wanted to be taken away by a woman. Not long after, Volto and his men came to meet Titus and went straight to place where Max and Kikimora was as a hostage. However, Volto was upset because Max and Kikimora had already escaped. After that, Volto scolded Titus for not doing his job properly. In fact, too upset, Volto immediately finished off Titus with a tool that Volto always carried. Then Volto contacted Beauty Queen to inform her that some of her men had now been killed by a woman. Volto will also send CCTV footage showing Kikimora slaughtering his men. Hearing this, Beauty Queen said that she could find new troops. After that, Beauty Queen met a man known as the son of a Russian diplomat. He told the Russian diplomat's son to open the CCTV footage that had just been sent by Volto. When the footage was played, Beauty Queen was shocked to see that the woman who killed Volto's men was Kikimora. This means that Beauty Queen already knows who Kikimora really is. Back to Kikimora, who is taking Max home in a car. Here, Max asks why she wants to save Max, but Kikimora doesn't answer and Max just keeps babbling. In fact, when they arrived at their destination, Max wanted to run away, so Kikimora no have choice to be a little rude. Apparently, Kikimora did not bring Max back to his adoptive parents' house, but took him to a secret place under Kikimora's land. She did this to protect Max from being hunted by the Volto group. A few hours later, Kikimora was seen making food to eat. However, Max ranted again, saying why she wasn't immediately sent back to his adoptive parents' house. Max even dared to yell at Kikimora. The scene moves to Igor, who is visited by his daughter named Zasia. It is known that this daughter chose to live with her mother. Because of Igor's poor life, the daughter and her mother did not want to live with Igor. Here, Igor tried to seduce his daughter to come often to check up on him. However, the daughter replied that she didn't want to go back to Igor's shabby house after that. Igor's daughter hurried home. She told Igor to make a lot of money so that the family could be reunited. While he was venting his frustration, Igor suddenly received a call from Kikimora, who asked Igor to contact Max's adoptive parents if Max was okay. Despite the bad situation, Igor was always willing to help Kikimora. A few hours later, when Kikimora was resting, she was startled by Max's voice, who was calling his adoptive parents. She immediately grabbed his cell phone and without hesitation smashed it. Kikimora had previously told Max not to contact his adoptive parents because his adoptive parents' phones must have been tapped and recorded. Max did not accept Kikimora's treatment. He became furious and forced Kikimora to release him from this place. Seeing her son like that, Kikimora finally explained that she was actually Max's biological mother. At that time, his father was killed by a hitman, and the hitman also targeted Kikimora and Max, who was still a baby. For this reason, Kikimora was no choice than she to put little Max in an orphanage until he was adopted by his current foster parents. To prove her point, Kikimora gave a can containing evidence of her words. Not long after, their location has now been successfully tracked by the Volto group. This was due to Max's carelessness in contacting his adoptive parents. Here, Kikimora told Max to hide in the room, while he would fight Volto's troops. After that, 3 of Volto's men came inside and immediately opened fire on the place. When they were to reload their weapons, Kikimora suddenly started to act to subvert them. After that, Kikimora came out of the underground room and returned to battle with the Volto troops outside. Then, Kikimora lured the remaining Volto troops into the empty building not far away. Behind that, Max opened the box that Kikimora had previously given him. Here it was revealed that Kikimora's real name was Nina Nowak, meaning that the grave that Kikimora and Igor visited was a fake grave as an attempt by Kikimora to eliminate his traces. It is known that Kikimora is a special forces major who was once assigned to eradicate mafia bosses. Back to Kikimora, she is now still dealing with Volto's troops. However, in the end, Kikimora also can finish them off. At the same time, Max came there and saw his mother, who had just finished off Volto's troops. However, Max chose to immediately return to his adoptive parents' house and just ignored Kikimora. Kikimora herself understands this, because Max must not be able to accept the real facts. On the other hand, it turned out that the police were confiscating all of Volto's money at his residence, which amounted to hundreds of millions of dollars. It is known that all the money actually belongs to Volto's big boss, Beauty Queen. From a distance, the Russian diplomat's son was seen arriving late, so that the Russian diplomat's son only gaped when that money was transported by the police. The next morning, Kikimora went to Max's adoptive parents to make sure that Max had returned home. However, at that moment, Kikimora fainted because she was very tired. Max's kind adoptive parents immediately treated Kikimora in the house. When Kikimora regained consciousness, she asked if Max had come home. Hearing this, Max's adoptive parents answered that Max had indeed come home. The next morning, Kikimora received a phone call, which turned out to be from Beauty Queen. Here, Beauty Queen said that Max had been successfully kidnapped, and if Kikimora wanted to take Max, then Kikimora had to return all the money that was confiscated by the police last night. Apparently, at night when Max was going home, he was caught by a Russian diplomat's son, so the Russian diplomat's son immediately kidnapped him. After that, Kikimora immediately went to Igor. Here, Kikimora asked Igor to give her access to the confiscation room. However, because Kikimora kept insisting, Igor finally agreed to Kikimora's request. Igor would let her know as soon as possible. When Kikimora wanted to leave, she was suddenly hit by a car from behind. When she woke up, Kikimora was in a car containing with all the Beauty Queen's money confiscated by the police. Apparently, the police officers who confiscated the money last night were Igor and his corrupt police friends. It turns out that all this had been planned long ago by Igor and his corrupt police friends. Igor deliberately pitted Kikimora and the Volto team against each other, so that he could freely rob Beauty Queen's money. Meanwhile, Dusan Dragon, who previously asked Volto's troops to kidnap Max, turned out to be Igor in disguise. Obviously, Igor's goal was only to pit them against each other. Then Igor told some of his colleagues to speed up the death of Kikimora, while he would secure the money. After that, when Igor was about to leave, his car was suddenly shot at from behind by Kikimora. This meant that Kikimora had managed to slaughter all of Igor's colleagues. Meanwhile, Igor quickly decided to run away. Then the car exploded, which made all the money inside scatter. Long story short, Kikimora came to Beauty Queen's headquarters while carrying some of the money that was previously scattered due to the car explosion. Here Beauty Queen wanted to finish Kikimora because the money underneath was only a few bags. But in the end, Beauty Queen did not want to take risks because if Kikimora was fought, it could be Kikimora who finished them off. Then Max was released and Kikimora immediately took Max home using an online taxi. While on the way, Igor was suddenly still upset with Kikimora for taking back his money. But in the end, Kikimora managed to corner Igor by asking what Igor's goal really was. Igor replied that he did all this for his children and wife who wanted a lot of money. Hearing that, Kikimora just beat Igor to almost death. Not long after, the police arrived, so Kikimora and Max left immediately. In a short time, Kikimora sent Max back to his adopted family. A few days later, when Kikimora was alone at home, she was suddenly visited by Max, who said that he would often visit Kikimora's house, because after all, Kikimora was his biological mother. Then, the movie ended.